Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Now we come to chapter 8. The title of chapter 8 is Respiratory System. This is the learning outcome in this chapter. Number 1, explain in brief the various respiratory surfaces in animal. Number 2, identify and describe the structure and function of human respiratory system. State the Fick's law of diffusion and Dalton law of partial pressure. Number 4, explain the process of gas exchange and gas transport. Number 5, describe the oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin. Number 6, discuss the control of breathing by chemoreceptor. And number 7, discuss the effect of smoking. So now we come to the first learning outcome, various respiratory surfaces in animal. Gas exchange is apparent in the structure of respiratory surfaces where gas exchange occurs by diffusion. Cells that carry out gas exchange have a plasma membrane that must be in contact with an aqueous solution. So, for fast gas exchange, respiratory surfaces for exchange of gases between their cells and their respiratory medium, which is air or water, must be large and moist. Then, the respiratory surfaces should be thin and the path for diffusion should be very short. In this slide are the list of respiratory surfaces in animal. We have outer surface, skin, gills, trachea, and lung. Different animal will use different respiratory surfaces for gas exchange. We go to the first one. We're going to discuss about the respiratory surfaces of unicellular organism. The entire cell surface of unicellular organism, for example amoeba, acts as respiratory organ. Oxygen and carbon dioxide simply diffuses in and out of the cell without requirement of a specific organ. This can only happen to unicellular due to their small size. Now, we go to the animal that use skin as their respiratory surfaces. Animals that use skin as a gas exchange organ are generally small and flat in size. This characteristic provides a high ratio of respiratory surface to body volume, allowing for sufficient gas exchange for the whole body. Skin breathers also need to live in damp water or moist places to facilitate the diffusion of gases across the skin to the dense net of thin wall capillaries lying just beneath the skin. As for fish, a specialized respiratory organ of fishes and many other aquatic invertebrates. There are two types of gills, external gills and internal gills. Gills are adapted to be used as respiratory surfaces because they are moist, thin in structure that extend from the body surface. Outer surface is exposed to water, the inner side to the network of blood vessels. Sea star and sea urchin have dermal gills that project from the body wall. Gases are exchanged between water and chloramine fluid. Various types of gill are found in some annelid, aquatic mollusks, crustaceans, fishes, and also amphibians. Because of that, gills have to be very efficient to meet the respiratory demand of aquatic animals. As for that, gill has a great respiratory surface area compared to the remaining body surface. The gills are full of tiny blood vessels that allow close contact with oxygen that dissolve in the surrounding water. Now, we're going to talk about external gills. External gills are gills that are not enclosed within body structures. Larvae of many fishes and amphibians have external gills. One example is the ocelot. The disadvantages of having external gills is that this gill will constant movement to avoid oxygen depletion, and also it's going to be easily damaged. The efficiency of fish gill is due to a simple adaptation we call as countercurrent exchange. Oxygen is transferred from the water that flows on the surface of the lamella to the blood that is flowing in the opposite direction within lamella. As the low oxygenated blood enters the lamella, it travels in the direction opposite to the water. It encounters fresher water with higher oxygen concentration. A steep diffusion gradient favors transfer of oxygen from the water into the blood. Now, we're going to discuss regarding the respiratory surfaces on terrestrial organisms. Before that, we're going to discuss why gills are not really suitable to be used for terrestrial organisms. In terrestrial habitats, gills are replaced because, number one, air is less buoyant than water. Gills need structural support of water because air is less buoyant than water. Gill will collapse outside water. Number two, water diffuses into air through evaporation. Gills provide an enormous surface area for water loss through evaporation. So, there are three main types of respiratory organ used by the terrestrial animal, which is trachea, skin, and lung. So now we go to the first example of the animal, which is insect. Insects have an extensive system of external chitin reinforced tube named the trachea, which branches throughout the body. Insects and some other arthropods have a network of tracheae that delivers air directly to the cell. Air enters through the spiracle along body surface. Muscle may help pump air in or out of the spiracle. This system eliminates the need of having a closed circulatory system for transporting oxygen as in higher animals. The insect system relies on a network of small tubes that channel oxygen directly to the different parts of the body. Air enters the trachea tube through the spiracle. The trachea tube branches into smaller and smaller tubes called tracheoles. The tip of the tracheole are closed and contain fluid where gases are exchanged between this fluid and the body cell. Piping air directly from the external environment to the cell works very well for insects because their small body gives them a high surface area to volume ratio. Insects also prevent excessive water loss by closing their spiracle. Main terrestrial vertebrates have lungs which are internal sac lined with moist epithelium. In contrast to the trachea system of insects, lungs are restricted to one location in the body. Therefore, there is a need for a circulatory system. For frogs, they use the cutaneous respiration, where exchange of gases through moist skin. Amphibians breathe using positive pressure, inflating the lung with forced airflow. They perform by filling their buccal cavity with air, close their mouth and nostril, and then elevate the floor of their oral cavity. This pushes the air down into the trachea. As for birds, flying is a high energy activity. Birds generally have a high metabolic rate and require a great deal of oxygen. Birds have evolved in two-cycle breeding process involving both lungs that involve unidirectional airflow. The bird lung channel air through tiny air vessels called parabronchi. Air passes one way through the tube while blood flows in the opposite direction. This is called the cross-current flow. Birds' lungs have two groups of air sacs, which is anterior and posterior. On inhalation, both sets of air sacs expand. Inhaled air flows down the trachea, bypasses the lung and fills up the posterior air sac. At the same time, the anterior air sac fills with stale air from the lung. On exhalation, both set of air sacs deflate, forcing fresh air from the posterior sac into the lung and stale air from the anterior sac out through the trachea. Due to unidirectional airflow and cross-current blood flow, the avian respiratory system is the most efficient among terrestrial habitats.